Thanks a lot, Program Director Nzima. Let me greet first my colleagues from the department, the senior management from district directors to other officials within the TLS branch, the curriculum branch who are here, and greet also members of top management who are here. And proceed to greet organized labor who are with us here, and most importantly, greet and welcome all our distinguished guests, some of whom will be presenting. The program director has indicated that later he will be mentioning you specifically by name and by where you come from. So for me, it suffices to say you are welcome, and we really appreciate your presence as distinguished guests. I know some have flown all the way from VETS and from other parts of the country, and they are here. It shows commitment and passion. And also great Mr. Tabane, who is here representing our head office in Pretoria. Mr. Tabane, we're so pleased that you could make time and be with us. And don't worry about us being the second in terms of holding the summit. To us, that's not important. Even if we're the ninth, I think we will be the first to come up with a strategy that we will actually implement. That's what we want. Before I say anything, I must apologize on behalf of the MEC. She would have loved to be here. Unfortunately, the Wednesday coincides with days when the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Exco meets. So she is in that meeting today, but has indicated that as and when she finds a gap during her schedule today, she will come and greet us and give us a short address. In which case we will ask your indulgence through the program director that when that time does come, we give her that opportunity, because this is so important that she would have loved to be here. But in any event, she has sent me to send greetings and to welcome you on her behalf. This is a very important summit, as the program director has indicated, with a very interesting theme that you've seen: mathematics, the vehicle to foundational skills for universal relevance. And that theme actually says it all. I'm saying it says it all because in casual conversations you hear sometimes people saying that what's the use of doing mathematics? Where does it really help you in life? And it's usually those people who either have never ventured to do mathematics or have, but with minimal success. Then discourage all of us from taking it up by, consoling themselves by saying, it doesn't help them, doesn't help much anyway. And some go on to make ridiculous examples like, even if you want to be a doctor, why need maths? And then you realize why they couldn't do well in maths. With that kind of logic, you then realize, okay, that's where this thing of not performing well themselves in mathematics comes from. But nonetheless, it plays a role, that those kinds of conversations play a role in discouraging and implanting something that says maths is difficult, maths is for the few. The other thing that contributes, in my view, in discouraging people from taking maths and learners, sometimes inadvertently are our own teachers who struggled to end up getting a BSc and end up with an attitude that says, I got a BSc and I majored in mathematics. So for all these learners to see how brilliant I am, I'm gonna make sure that they see it all the time as something that's difficult, that only people like myself could have succeeded in. Basically, those are teachers who do it more like for personal aggrandizement, in other words, to be praised how good they are, instead of an attitude that says, maths is for people like you and me, and you are like me. I'm not different. They strive to make themselves different, a class above everybody else, and learners spend time in awe about how good they are, and they can only show how good they are by showing how difficult maths is, but they have mastered it, difficult as it is. And inadvertently, that then can play a role in discouraging learners. And they do that unconsciously most of the time. They don't mean any harm. It just happens. It just happens like that. And some of them are doing it because it was done to them, and that's the damage that happened to them. Some of them, colleagues, while they were at university, maybe their university lecturers and professors displayed that kind of attitude towards them. And unconsciously, they then go and perpetuate this kind of behavior, because if somebody stands before you as a professor of mathematics and you're a first year student, you're doing mathematics 1, you stand in awe. You must all remember your first day in that maths class. You stand in awe of that person, and if he has that attitude that says, this is not necessarily for you, but you can try it. But I know that in the history of this class, I don't remember more than 50% success. And some in the past would go to the extent of actually telling their students, even if they are left now with 2 students, they will still go on and say, I've never achieved 100%. Which then makes you look around and say, hey, it means it's 50% or less. And if it's 50% and there's 2 of us, I wish to be that 50% that's going to pass. It might actually, the problem is if there's 2 of you, then if he says 50% or less actually now means 0. That's the problem. The national trend on learner performance in the country has shown a national average learner performance which is constantly below 50%. And that's concerning because the National Development Plan invokes and directs us that by year 2030, which is only a few years away now, hardly six years away now, we should be having learners who are performing at over 60% in mathematics. And the uptake as well of maths should actually be on the rise. That is why, in an effort realizing this disturbing trend, the Department of Basic Education has declared the year 2023 as the year of mathematics, and requires all of us as provinces to actually come up with a strategy of how to break through this ceiling of under 60 performance in mathematics. 7 years before we actually reach that milestone of 2030. And that's the reason why we are here to develop a strategy to tap from the wisdom of all the people in the room, so that we come up with a strategy of how we do that. And coupled with the need for good performance in mathematics, in terms of the NDP, we should actually be increasing the number of learners that actually take mathematics. And sadly, the highest we have ever been in terms of ratios of mathematics versus maths lit, from grade 10 obviously to 12. The highest ratio has been just a few years ago, I think up to about 2018-19, we were at 60-40. 60-40 in favor of mathematics, and 40% in maths lit. And everywhere we went, we were being praised as a mathematics province, but in terms of the uptake of maths by learners. And certainly we were not praised for being a province that performs well, but just in terms of numbers of learners that take mathematics, and in terms of the ratio compared to maths lit, we were having a favorable ratio as a province. Interestingly, during the same years, there's a province that kept doing well, in the other vital statistics, and that is Limpopo, which kept doing well, and I'm sure it still does well now in mathematics, where in the log system that the country is following of which province performed best, number 1, Free State, number 2, Gauteng, and so on. Where if you looked at that, you would find that Limpopo is protecting its space at number 9. And we were there at some point ourselves, we were hovering around there. But you would find that their actual performance in mathematics was very good. In spite of where they were in this unfair log system that were following, which actually means that we could learn something from provinces like Limpopo as well, in terms of how they have managed to relatively do well in mathematics. I have already mentioned that decline that we see in favor of maths lit as opposed to mathematics. One of the things that I have observed with that decline, particularly last year's decline, and that's what I would implore commissions to look at as well, is that as we increased the uptake of maths lit and decreased that of maths, somehow we then did well in terms of results in maths lit, better than in the previous years. In the previous years, we were not doing well in mathematics, neither were we covering ourselves in glory in maths lit itself. But we've been steadily improving our performance in maths lit. And we should look at whether it is not because some of our learners who end up taking maths lit are learners who could have passed mathematics as well, had they been channeled and encouraged correctly. The other thing that I think I would implore, because those are questions that I have myself, so I would implore experts that will be sitting in commissions to look at such things, is tracing the performance of our learners from the foundation phase up to grade 12, and looking at where the turning point is. Because in the foundation phase we have numeracy and life skills. And when you look at the performance of those 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, no red flags are seen at that point. We don't see red flags flashing at that point. We start seeing red flags later, flashing. And what could be the reason why we don't see those red flags at that level? I mean, if you look at how our learners will be performing, for example, in numeracy, and compared to how they then perform in mathematics, in grade 9, for example, just before they have to choose whether they are taking Maths Lit or Maths. If you look at that, you will see that there's a point where there's a gradual decline in performance, which makes you even question the good performance in the earlier years. And I'm saying this in order to emphasize the fact that we should also concentrate at that level, at that foundational level, because some of the problems can be traced back there. There are concepts that, if not mastered at a particular level, it will be very difficult to get them mastered later in the schooling year of any child. So those are things that or some of the few things that come to mind in terms of discussions that we may actually have in our commissions. I think the objectives of the summit, the program director has summarized them. We have to come up with a strategy to increase the participation rate in mathematics. And it's clear there, if you want to increase the participation rate in mathematics, it means you've got to go, I was asking Dr. Makatini just now, that when do we encounter Maths Lit? And he tells me, no, we encounter Maths Lit in grade 10. The question is, before that, what do we have? Before that, we have Maths. Up to grade 9, and then Maths Lit, grade 10. So it obviously means that if you're talking participation, you shouldn't just be concentrating on the FET phase, the last 3 grades, 10, 11, 12, but we should be looking at grades below that, because those are the performance and the confidence gained there informs the choices that learners make going to grade 10. Because if you're looking at grade 10, 11, 12 as a place where you're trying to solve the problem, I mean, it's too late. That is why when I looked at the program and I realized that we're talking about a 5-year strategy, I said, well, that's fine. Because you can't have now, you can microwave strategies around performance now, but around uptake, it's almost impossible because learners have already made a choice for this year. You can go to our stats and say there are so many learners. I mean, if we're talking about that ratio that I was talking about, that's 62-38 kind of ratio we had last year. Now, if you go to grade 10 today, you can draw stats that will tell you what the situation is like, so that you don't just in 2025 and say, hey, the uptake, you calculate it at that point, that it's only 60-40 again in favor of Maths Lit. We should do it now in grade 10, but it's basically water under the bridge, because whatever you have now in grade 10 is not likely to increase, but unfortunately can actually decrease, because some learners who might have chosen maths in grade 10 can end up switching to maths lit even as late as grade 11, and in some cases as late as grade 12. Those are the things that are actually happening. But lastly, we still need good results. So part of what we must discuss in our commissions is how do we increase the uptake, but perform well as well, increase also the performance. And discuss how to destroy the myth that we unconsciously perpetuate that says the two cannot be mutually inclusive. The more, in terms of numbers that take maths, the less in terms of percentage that's going to pass. Let's deal with that myth and demystify that, because that's what drives, unfortunately, ourselves and managers at school level. The fact that we want our schools to do well. Then we take decisions that are like saying, let me have less taking maths, so that in my circuit, so that my circuit or my district is going to be number one. That kind of thinking that says these two, the high uptake and good performance, are not mutually exclusive concepts. With that, colleagues, let me wish you good deliberations during the two-day summit. Thank you very much, Program Director.